The Centauri Culinary Station gleamed like a perfectly polished serving plate against the backdrop of endless stars. Its massive rotating rings housed the most prestigious kitchens in the known galaxy, where master chefs from 1,000 worlds practiced their craft. Today, however, the station's pristine order was about to be disrupted by the arrival of Earth's representative to the Galactic Food Summit. Senna Patel stepped off the transport shuttle, her cargo cases rattling with mason jars and fermentation crocks. Her traditional Indian chef's coat was adorned with patches from Earth's various culinary traditions, a visible representation of her philosophy that good food knew no boundaries. The station's atmospheric processors struggled to neutralize the complex bouquet of aromas emanating from her luggage, drawing curious and horrified looks from passing aliens. "Excuse me, but there seems to be some sort of bacterial infection in your containers," a spindly station officer approached, their sensor appendages twitching nervously. "Our quarantine protocols." "That's just my koji starter and some experimental kimchi," Senna replied cheerfully, pulling out a datapad with her credentials. "All properly documented and certified by the Galactic Health Board. Though I admit the black garlic is pretty pungent this batch." The officer's translucent skin shifted through several shades of distress before reluctantly waving her through. Senna wheeled her cases toward the competitor's quarter, humming an old Bollywood tune. She hadn't expected a warm welcome. Earth's inclusion in the summit had been controversial enough. Their cooking methods were considered primitive at best, dangerous at worst. In the main atrium, a crowd had gathered around a demonstration station where Chef Nrithval, the renowned Xylaxian master of molecular gastronomy, was creating their signature dish. Their 4 arms moved in perfect synchronization, manipulating quantum flavor fields and probability-shifted proteins into geometric patterns that defied physics. "Observe," Nrithval's melodic voice carried across the atrium, "how the flavor molecules align in perfect crystalline structures, each bite calculated to provide optimal pleasure response across 17 different species taste receptors." The audience cooed in appreciation as the dish emitted a soft glow of gastronomic perfection. Senna couldn't help but stop to watch. The technical skill was undeniable, but something was missing. There was no soul in those perfectly aligned molecules, no story in those calculated pleasure responses. She was about to continue on her way when one of Nrithval's secondary eyes caught sight of her cases. The Xylaxian chef's appendages stiffened in recognition. "Ah, the Earth representative arrives," Nrithval announced, their tone carrying the same warmth as a vacuum freezer. "Still insisting on bringing your fermented substances to our prestigious gathering?" Senna smiled, used to this reaction. "Just wait until you try my miso-marinated tempeh. Even quantum flavor fields can't replicate 3,000 years of microbial craftsmanship." The horror that rippled through the audience was almost comical. Several crystalline beings actually chimed in distress. "You intentionally age your proteins with microorganisms?" Nrithval's voice carried genuine concern. "And you expect us to consider this cooking?" "Cooking. It's more than cooking," Senna replied, her passion rising. "It's collaboration with life itself. Every culture on Earth discovered that working with nature's processes creates flavors more complex than any we could design alone." Primitive superstition, Nrithval dismissed, their secondary arms making dismissive gestures. True culinary art requires precision, control, predictability. Your methods are little better than leaving food to rot. The crowd murmured in agreement, but Senna noticed a few curious looks. She'd seen that look before, the same one humans got right before trying something they'd swear they'd hate but ended up loving. "Tell you what," Senna offered, pulling a small jar from her coat pocket. "Try this. It's just a simple natto. If you can honestly say there's no culinary value in fermentation after tasting it, I'll pack up and head home." Nrithval's 4 arms crossed in simultaneous rejection. "I do not need to taste decay to know it is inferior to proper molecular cuisine." "Sounds like fear to me," Senna shrugged, knowing the words would strike home. In any culture, a chef's courage was as important as their skill. The atrium fell silent. Nrithval's bioluminescent patches pulsed with indignation. Very well. If you wish to demonstrate the superiority of your primitive methods, let us arrange a proper competition. 3 days, 3 courses, judged by the Galactic Culinary Council themselves. Senna's smile widened. Now that sounds like proper cooking. I accept. As she finally made her way to her quarters, Senna could feel the station's atmosphere shifting. Word of the challenge spread through communication tendrils and telepathic networks. The prestigious Galactic Food Summit was about to become something far more interesting, a showdown between the most advanced food science in the galaxy and the ancient wisdom of Earth's kitchens. In her quarters, Senna began unpacking her precious cargo of starters and cultures, each jar a testament to humanity's long partnership with the microscopic world. Well, my little friends, she whispered to a particularly lively batch of kefir grains, looks like we've got some minds to change. The news of the culinary challenge spread through the Centauri station's crystalline corridors faster than a quantum entanglement broadcast. Within hours, betting pools had formed among the various species, with the odds heavily favoring Nrithval. The Xylaxian chef's reputation for perfection had been built over 3 centuries of flawless execution, while Earth's culinary traditions were seen as quaint at best. In her preparation kitchen, Senna organized her workspace with methodical care. Unlike the sleek, automated kitchens preferred by most galactic chefs, her station looked more like an alchemist's laboratory. Glass jars of various sizes lined the shelves, each containing different experiments in various stages of fermentation. The familiar smell of koji spores and lactobacillus brought a sense of home to the sterile station air. Chef Patel, a melodic voice interrupted her organizing. I believe there's been a mistake with your equipment allocation. A tall, luminescent being stood in her doorway, Administrator Lux Vora of the Galactic Culinary Council. Their translucent form rippled with concerned colors. Your assigned kitchen lacks standard molecular reconstructors, quantum taste modulators, or even basic flavor field generators, they continued. Shall I arrange for proper equipment? Senna smiled, lifting a heavy stone mortar and pestle from one of her cases. This is all the equipment I need, Administrator. Well, this and time. Time. Lux Vora's form flickered in confusion. The competition begins in 3 days. Some of my ingredients have been preparing for months, Senna explained, gesturing to her collection of ferments. Each jar contains billions of tiny chefs who've been working long before I arrived. The administrator's colors shifted to a concerned purple. You mean to tell me you're serving pre-prepared ingredients? That's against competition regulations. Not pre-prepared, alive and evolving. Like a fine wine or aged cheese. The rules say nothing about ingredients that improve themselves naturally over time. Lux Vora spent several moments processing this concept, their crystalline structure chiming softly in thought. I will need to consult the rulebook. This is unprecedented. Meanwhile, across the station, Nrithval was conducting their own preparations with military precision. Their 4 arms danced through holographic recipe projections, each movement calculated to micrometric accuracy. A team of helper drones orbited their workspace, adjusting temperature fields and molecular density gradients with quantum precision. Your opponent is making quite a stir, remarked their sous chef, a cybernetically enhanced Rigelian named Zix. Several council members have requested to observe her methodology. Nrithval's secondary eyes narrowed while their primary pair remained focused on calibrating a flavor matrix. Curiosity about primitive techniques is natural, I suppose. Like studying ancient cave paintings while standing in a holographic gallery. Still, Zix's cybernetic sensors whirred thoughtfully, her approach is unusual. My databases contain no reference to cooking methods that employ living organisms as active ingredients. Because it's not cooking, Nrithval replied sharply. It's glorified accident. Humans stumbled upon chemical reactions they couldn't understand and built superstitions around them. We will demonstrate true culinary mastery, perfect, predictable, precise. Back in her kitchen, Senna was deep in her own form of precision work. Her hands moved through familiar motions as she prepared new batches of starter cultures. Each mixture was measured by eye and feel, using skills passed down through generations of fermenters across Earth. A small crowd had gathered at her kitchen's observation window, watching with a mixture of horror and fascination as she massaged salt into cabbage leaves for kimchi. The very idea of touching food with bare hands, albeit properly sanitized ones, was shocking to many galactic species who preferred the sterile distance of automated systems. The bacteria on her skin will contaminate the food, one observer whispered in alarm. Actually, Senna called out, her hands never stopping their rhythmic movement, the beneficial bacteria we're cultivating are far more powerful than anything harmful. It's about creating the right environment for life to thrive in the way we want it to. She held up a jar of deep red kimchi that had been fermenting for weeks. This is what it becomes, complex, alive, unique. Every batch tells the story of its creation through flavor. A small gelatinous being oozed forward, its sensory organs pulsing with interest. But how do you control the exact flavor development? That's the beauty of it, you don't, not completely. You guide it, create the right conditions, but then you have to trust the process. It's a partnership with nature, not a dictatorship over it. The concept seemed to both disturb and intrigue her audience. Several made notes in their personal databases, while others quickly floated away, seemingly offended by the whole idea. As the day progressed, Senna received an official notice from the Culinary Council. After much debate, they had ruled that her fermented ingredients would be allowed, provided she could prove they were indeed living cultures and not pre-made flavoring agents. She would need to demonstrate the fermentation process as part of her competition preparations. Perfect, she grinned, already planning how to incorporate the demonstration into her presentations. If she had to prove that fermentation was a valid cooking technique, she would do so in a way that no one could ignore. That evening, as the station's artificial day cycled dim to night, both chefs sat in their respective kitchens, planning their strategies. Nrithval meticulously programmed quantum probability matrices to ensure each dish would achieve maximum flavor impact across all known sentient taste receptors. Senna carefully tended her cultures, listening to the subtle bubbling of active fermentation that told her when each batch was reaching its peak. Two different approaches to mastery, one seeking to control every variable, the other embracing controlled chaos. In 3 days, they would discover which philosophy would prevail in the eyes of the galaxy's most distinguished palates. The first day of competition dawned with an atmosphere as charged as an ionic storm. The station's main culinary arena had been transformed into a grand theater, with floating observation platforms circling 2 central kitchen stations. One gleamed with Nrithval's array of quantum gastronomy equipment, while the other displayed Senna's collection of earthenware crocks and glass jars. Contestants, Administrator Luxvora's voice resonated through the arena, their crystalline form glowing with ceremonial importance. Today's challenge will test your ability to adapt and innovate. The secret ingredient. A shimmering force field dissolved, revealing a large aquarium filled with writhing, iridescent tentacles. Celestial squid from the methane seas of Titan Prime. This delicacy is known for its psychological effects as much as its flavor. You have 4 hours to create an appetizer that showcases its unique properties. Senna studied the creature thoughtfully. She'd never worked with alien seafood before, but the prismatic sheen of its flesh reminded her of cuttlefish. Her mind was already racing with possibilities. Nrithval moved with practiced efficiency, their 4 arms orchestrating a complex dance of molecular deconstruction. The Xylaxian chef's equipment hummed to life, breaking down the squid's flesh into its component molecules for perfect reconstruction. Observe, they announced to the audience, how we shall transform this primitive creature into an experience of pure refined elegance. Senna took a different approach. She carefully cleaned her portion of the squid, studying its texture and aroma. When she pulled out a jar of koji spores, several judges made noting gestures in their data tablets. Chef Patel, one of the judges, a gaseous being contained in an environmental suit, wafted forward. You intend to ferment this highly unstable psychoactive protein structure. Just a quick ferment, Senna assured them, already massaging the koji into the flesh. The enzymes will break down the tougher proteins while enhancing the natural psychoactive compounds. Trust me, it's going to be amazing. Hours passed as both chefs worked their magic in entirely different ways. Nrithval's station became a light show of quantum manipulation, each tentacle transformed into perfectly geometric shapes that pulsed with controlled energy. The audience oohed and awed at the technical display. Meanwhile, Senna's station looked deceptively simple. The squid, now marinating in a mixture of koji and her special blend of aromatics, underwent a more subtle transformation. The flesh began to glow with an inner light, reacting to the fermentation process in unexpected ways. "Is it supposed to be singing?" asked a nervous judge, pointing to the distinct harmonic tones now emanating from Senna's marinade. "Oh, that's new," Senna admitted, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. The psychoactive compounds must be resonating with the bacterial activity. Let's see where this goes. The final hour brought increasing intensity. Nrithval's creation took shape as a constellation of floating spheres, each containing a different aspect of the squid's flavor profile, designed to be consumed in a specific sequence for maximum impact. Senna's dish emerged as something far more primal but no less impressive. The fermented squid had transformed into opalescent strips that pulsed with bioluminescence, arranged on a bed of quick-pickled seaweed she'd brought from Earth. The harmonic tones had settled into a subtle hum that seemed to draw listeners into a meditative state. "Time," announced Luxvora. "Present your creations to the judges." Nrithval went first, their presentation as precisely choreographed as a stellar ballet. "I present quantum harmony in 7 movements, each sphere calibrated to activate specific pleasure centers while maintaining perfect molecular balance." The judges sampled the spheres, their various anatomies registering approval at the technical perfection. That is, until the last judge, an ancient Verdanian whose tree-like form bore fruit that was itself considered a delicacy. "Perfect," the Verdanian creaked, yet somehow, soulless. "Like eating mathematics." Then came Senna's turn. "I offer you Ocean's Memory, koji fermented celestial squid with earth umami. The bacteria have enhanced the squid's natural properties while creating something entirely new. Every bite tells a story of transformation." The judges approached her dish with visible trepidation. The first bite caused their various sensory organs to widen in surprise. The psychoactive properties, rather than being contained and controlled as in Nrithval's version, had been transformed into something more profound. Each bite seemed to carry memories of ancient seas, both terrestrial and alien. "It's alive," gasped the gaseous judge, their containment suit swirling with excited particles. "Impossible," Nrithval interjected, their secondary eyes blinking rapidly. "The molecular structure should have broken down completely during fermentation. This result defies quantum gastronomy principles." "Sometimes the best creations do," Senna replied softly, watching as the judges experienced not just flavors, but an entire evolutionary history written in taste. The scoring took longer than usual, with heated debates among the judges. Finally, Administrator Luxvora floated forward, their crystalline form vibrating with anticipation. "For technical achievement and precision, highest marks to Chef Nrithval." The Xylaxian chef's bioluminescent patches glowed with satisfaction. "For innovation and sensory impact, highest marks to Chef Patel." The crowd buzzed with excitement. A tie in the first round was unprecedented. "The competition continues tomorrow," Luxvora announced. "And chefs, prepare yourselves. The next secret ingredient will challenge more than your culinary skills." As the audience dispersed, Senna caught Nrithval studying her remaining fermented squid with their secondary eyes, a flicker of curiosity breaking through their usual disdain. Perhaps there was hope for bridge building between their different philosophies after all. The second day of competition brought an even larger crowd to the Centauri Culinary Station's arena. News of the unprecedented tie had spread across the galaxy, drawing gourmands and culinary critics from dozens of star systems. The viewing platforms were packed with beings of all forms, from energy constructs to silicon-based life forms. Administrator Lux Vora's form shimmered with barely contained excitement as they revealed the day's challenge. Chefs, today you will work with something that has never before been used in galactic haute cuisine. The force field dissolved, revealing what appeared to be ordinary soil in a hovering container. Earth dirt. Nrithval's secondary eyes blinked in confusion. This is hardly a culinary ingredient. Not dirt, Senna breathed, her eyes widening as she recognized the distinctive texture. That's terra preta from the Amazon rainforest. Living soil, created by ancient human civilizations. It's full of microorganisms and complex carbon structures that have evolved over thousands of years. Correct, Lux Vora chimed. This bioactive substrate contains more unique organisms than most planetary ecosystems. Your challenge: create a main course that honors and utilizes its properties. You have 5 hours. Nrithval's confidence visibly wavered. Their quantum gastronomy equipment was designed to work with distinct molecular structures, not the chaotic complexity of living soil. Still, they began scanning the substance, attempting to break it down into manageable components. Senna, however, was in her element. She immediately began preparing a special marinade, incorporating some of the soil's beneficial bacteria into her fermentation process. On Earth, some of our most prized foods come from understanding soil microbes, she explained to the fascinated judges. Wine, cheese, even some types of cured meats, they all depend on the same kinds of processes happening in this soil. As the hours progressed, the two chefs' approaches diverged dramatically. Nrithval struggled to impose order on the chaos, their usual precise techniques failing to fully capture the soil's essence. Their frustration manifested in increasingly complex molecular manipulations, trying to force the unruly substance into submission. The molecular structure keeps evolving, they muttered, all 4 arms working frantically to adjust their quantum flavor fields. Every time I isolate a compound, it transforms into something new. Meanwhile, Senna worked with the soil's natural properties, incorporating it into a complex fermentation system. She created what she called a living broth, where the soil's microorganisms enhanced the flavors of traditional ingredients she'd brought from Earth. The aroma from her station began to captivate the audience. Even beings without traditional olfactory organs found themselves drawn to the rich, complex scents emanating from her bubbling pots. The soil's interaction with her ferments created unexpected synergies, producing flavors that had never before existed in the galaxy. Halfway through the competition, something extraordinary happened. Nrithval, frustrated by their lack of progress, found themselves drawn to Senna's station. Their secondary eyes watched intently as she worked with the living ingredients. How do you know what it will become? They asked, their usual condescension replaced by genuine curiosity. I don't, exactly, Senna replied, stirring her broth. But I've learned to read the signs. Here, watch how the bubbles form patterns. That tells me how the fermentation is progressing. For a moment, the two chefs shared a look of understanding. Nrithval returned to their station with a thoughtful expression, their approach subtly shifting. Instead of fighting against the soil's natural processes, they began incorporating them into their quantum gastronomy techniques. The final hour brought remarkable transformations. Nrithval produced what they called evolution spheres, quantum-stabilized droplets that captured the soil's living essence while guiding its development through carefully calibrated energy fields. It wasn't their usual perfect geometry, but it had a wild beauty all its own. Senna's creation was even more dramatic. Her Earth's memory stew incorporated the soil's microbes into a complex ecosystem of flavors. The dish seemed to tell the story of life itself, from the first microorganisms to the complex interplay of species in a rainforest. When the judges tasted the final dishes, their reactions defied the usual careful protocol. The gaseous judge's containment suit filled with rainbow patterns of appreciation. The Verdanian judge sprouted new branches on the spot, a sign of extreme emotional impact. Administrator Lux Vora took an unusually long time to announce the scores. For technical innovation in adapting to unexpected conditions, highest marks to Chef Nrithval. For creating an entirely new category of culinary experience, highest marks to Chef Patel. Another tie. But more significant than the scores was the change in the audience's reaction. The previous skepticism about Earth's primitive cooking methods had been replaced by genuine interest. Several renowned galactic chefs could be seen taking notes on fermentation techniques. As the arena cleared, Nrithval approached Senna's station. Perhaps, they said, their bioluminescent patches pulsing with newfound respect, there is something to be learned from your partnership with chaos. Senna smiled. And maybe I could learn a thing or two about precision from you. Tomorrow's the final round, want to share some ideas? The Xylaxian chef's forearms made a gesture of cautious agreement. As they began to discuss techniques, neither noticed Administrator Luxvora's satisfied shimmer. The final challenge would test more than their culinary skills, it would challenge their ability to bridge the gap between their two philosophies. The final day of competition arrived with an atmosphere of electric anticipation. The culinary arena was filled beyond capacity, with overflow crowds watching on quantum hologram projections throughout the station. But the biggest surprise wasn't the audience, it was the setup of the kitchen stations. Instead of two separate areas, there was only one large central platform. Administrator Luxvora's crystalline form sparkled as they made the announcement. Today's challenge is different. You will not compete against each other, you will collaborate. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Nrithval's secondary eyes blinked rapidly while Senna's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Your final challenge is this, Luxvora continued, revealing a shimmering container. Inside was what appeared to be a living nebula, swirling with colors and energy. The heart of a starborn cloud creature. It is simultaneously alive and dying, ordered and chaotic. Only by combining your techniques can you hope to create something worthy of its nature. Senna and Nrithval exchanged glances. After their discussion the previous evening, they'd gained respect for each other's methods, but working together? That was another matter entirely. The time limit is 6 hours, Luxvora announced. Show us what the future of galactic cuisine could be. The two chefs approached their shared workspace cautiously. The nebula creature pulsed with impossible colors, its very existence challenging their understanding of what food could be. Its quantum state is highly unstable, Nrithval observed, their sensors analyzing the swirling essence. Traditional molecular gastronomy would destroy its unique properties. And straight fermentation would be too slow, Senna added, studying the living light. We need something new. What followed was unlike anything the galactic culinary world had ever seen. Nrithval's quantum fields began working in harmony with Senna's fermentation vessels, creating controlled environments where both chaos and order could thrive. They developed a hybrid technique on the spot, using quantum stabilizers to accelerate natural fermentation while maintaining the living essence of their ingredients. The nebula creature's essence was carefully separated into multiple components, each treated with a different combination of their techniques. Senna's probiotic cultures began to glow with quantum energy under Nrithval's careful calibration. The Xylaxian chef's precise molecular arrangements gained new complexity as they incorporated living processes. Hours passed as they worked, moving in an increasingly coordinated dance around their shared kitchen. Where their styles had once seemed incompatible, they now found unexpected synchronicity. Nrithval's forearms worked in concert with Senna's too, passing ingredients and making adjustments with practiced ease. The quantum field is destabilizing, Nrithval would call out, and Senna would immediately add a stabilizing culture from her collection. The fermentation is accelerating too quickly, Senna would notice, and Nrithval's precise energy fields would adjust to maintain the perfect balance. The audience watched in fascination as something entirely new took shape. It wasn't just a dish, it was a living artwork, a bridge between technologies separated by light years of development. In the final hour, they assembled their creation. They called it Cosmic Symphony, a dish that existed in multiple states simultaneously, like its starborn inspiration. Parts of it were precisely arranged by quantum fields, while others grew and evolved through guided fermentation. The colors shifted and swirled, but never chaotically. The living components pulsed with energy, but never out of harmony. When they presented it to the judges, even Administrator Lux Vora seemed at a loss for words. The dish didn't just combine their techniques, it transcended them. The gaseous judge's containment suit filled with patterns never before seen in their species. The Verdanian judge's fruits began to glow with bioluminescence. Each judge experienced something different, yet all were moved beyond their usual professional detachment. This, Lux Vora finally announced, their crystalline form resonating with emotion, is why we hold these competitions. Not to determine who is superior, but to push the boundaries of what is possible. The scoring was unanimous, not just perfect marks, but a recommendation that their combined techniques be documented and shared throughout the galaxy as a new school of culinary arts. As the crowd celebrated and cameras flashed, Senna turned to Nrithval with a grin. Not bad for a collaboration between precision and chaos, huh? The Xylaxian chef's bioluminescent patches glowed with what could only be described as joy. Perhaps that is what has been missing from galactic cuisine, the understanding that true perfection lies not in controlling nature or surrendering to it, but in finding the harmony between both approaches. In the days that followed, their achievement sparked a revolution in galactic cooking. Quantum fermentation became a new field of study. Traditional alien chefs began experimenting with Earth bacteria, while human cooking schools incorporated quantum gastronomy into their curricula. The Centauri Culinary Station established a new research center dedicated to exploring the intersection of different cooking philosophies. Its first directors: a human chef who trusted in chaos and a Xylaxian master who learned to embrace it. And in kitchens across the galaxy, chefs of all species began to understand that the greatest innovations come not from insisting on one way of doing things, but from being brave enough to try something new. The competition that had started as a clash between old and new, primitive and advanced, had become something more, a testament to the power of collaboration and the endless possibilities that arise when different worlds come together in the spirit of creation.